It was a crisp Tuesday afternoon when Jack, the 32-year-old parking lot security guard, found himself in the middle of an encounter that would change his life forever. The steady hum of luxury cars cruising through the parking lot, the sound of heels clicking against the pavement, and the familiar scent of high-end coffee from the nearby cafe all felt routine, comforting almost. But that day, everything was about to be shaken. Jack had seen all sorts of people, celebrities, influencers, business tycoons, you name it. They all passed through his parking lot with an air of superiority, too busy or too important to even acknowledge the guy standing behind the security booth. But today, the man approaching Jack's booth wasn't just any celebrity. He wasn't an influencer trying to sell some overhyped product or a business mogul looking to secure his latest deal. No, today, it was Elon Musk himself. Jack squinted as the familiar Tesla model slowly rolled into the parking spot. The car was electric, sleek, a symbol of modern technology and future innovation. But to Jack, it was just another fancy car driven by someone who thought the world revolved around them. As Musk parked and stepped out of his car, Jack couldn't help but roll his eyes. The billionaire's polished appearance, suit, clean-cut hair, and that signature look of confidence struck Jack as nothing more than pretension. What did this guy have that Jack didn't? A pile of money and a reputation for changing the world? Big deal. Jack wasn't impressed. Elon glanced over at the parking lot security booth and gave a brief nod. But Jack, fed up with his monotonous life and the endless stream of important people who never gave him the time of day, couldn't hold back his frustration. It was a fleeting thought, a quick burst of irritation that exploded from his lips before he could stop himself. "Hey, Musk!" Jack shouted across the lot, voice carrying louder than usual. "Maybe try parking like a normal person for once, huh? Or are you too busy saving the world to follow basic rules?" Elon's expression didn't falter. He didn't seem angry or even offended. In fact, he just stared at Jack for a long moment, his eyes unreadable. The air between them thickened with tension as the sound of Jack's own heartbeat thundered in his chest. What had he just done? Jack crossed his arms, suddenly feeling a sense of power, like he had finally stood up to the arrogance of people like Musk. But instead of the confrontation escalating into some fiery exchange of words, Musk simply smiled, a cool, almost unsettling smile. "I'll keep that in mind, Jack," Elon replied, his voice calm, unbothered, and eerily composed. Then, without another word, Musk turned, heading inside the building with that same air of self-assurance. For a moment, Jack stood frozen in place, trying to process what had just occurred. He had expected an argument, some kind of heated back and forth, but instead, Musk had barely acknowledged the insult. Jack felt a sense of disbelief. He had just insulted one of the most influential men in the world, and Musk hadn't even flinched. The world around Jack seemed to slow down. The noise of the busy parking lot faded into the background as the weight of what he had just done began to sink in. He thought it was a harmless jab, a momentary release of frustration. But as he watched Musk's figure disappear into the building, a strange unease settled in the pit of his stomach. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Jack Parker's life hadn't been the stuff of dreams, and he'd stopped expecting it to be. At 32, he had settled into a rhythm of mediocrity that most people would have found comfortable, but to him, it felt suffocating. The long shifts, the boring conversations, and the relentless monotony of being a parking lot security guard at a high-end shopping center were all he knew. And he hated it. He hadn't always felt like this. There was a time, years ago, when he had dreams of something bigger. Growing up in a small town in Texas, Jack had always been the kind of kid who wanted to make something of himself. His father, a mechanic, had raised him to believe that hard work could get you anywhere. But as Jack reached adulthood, he realized that life wasn't so simple. Hard work didn't always pay off. Not when you didn't have the connections, the opportunities, or the luck. In high school, Jack had been a star athlete, fast, strong, and capable of leading his football team to victory. He thought sports would be his ticket out. But when an injury sidelined him just before a potential college scholarship, it was like the rug had been pulled out from under him. His dreams of becoming a professional athlete evaporated in an instant, and so did his confidence. Without any backup plan, Jack drifted. He worked odd jobs, construction, bartending, anything that paid the bills, but none of it felt like it had purpose. Over time, his sense of hope withered away. That's when he fell into the security gig at the shopping center. It wasn't much, but it was steady, and steady was good enough. The job allowed him to pay rent and buy enough beer to drown out the frustration of his stagnant life. Still, he couldn't help but resent the flashy cars that parked in the lot every day. It felt like a reminder of everything he would never be: successful, wealthy, and admired. And then there were the people, the arrogant, rich customers who strutted around with their overpriced coffee and designer clothes, completely unaware of the people like him, the ones who worked behind the scenes to make sure their experience was flawless. There was one person who always seemed to bring Jack back to reality, though: Maria. Maria was different. She had been his girlfriend for nearly 3 years, and unlike Jack, she hadn't given up on her dreams. She worked as a nurse at a nearby hospital, and her passion for helping others was infectious. She was everything Jack wasn't: ambitious, caring, and full of life. She reminded him that there was more to life than just surviving, but lately, even her optimism had begun to wear thin. "Jack, you need to make a change," she would tell him on the nights when they'd talk about their future. "You can't keep doing this forever. You're better than this." But Jack would always brush it off. "What's the point, Maria? You work hard, you play by the rules, and nothing happens. All that's left is this boring, dead-end job. Nothing's going to change for me." Maria had tried to be understanding, but Jack could see the sadness in her eyes. She had her own struggles to deal with, but she still pushed herself to strive for something better. Jack, on the other hand, had become comfortable in his misery, convincing himself that it was easier to live in the shadows of other people's success than to try and fail like so many before him. In many ways, Jack had come to accept his place in the world. His resentment toward the wealthy, the famous, and the powerful had grown into a quiet bitterness. It wasn't that he hated people like Elon Musk, it was more like he envied them. They had the power to shape the world, to control the narrative, and they didn't have to worry about how they'd pay rent or put food on the table. But despite his resentment, Jack never expected anything to change. He didn't expect someone like Musk to come into his life, especially not in such an unexpected way. So when Elon had arrived in his Tesla, Jack had let the frustration boil over. The harsh words he threw Musk's way were a product of years of pent-up anger, the product of years of seeing others succeed while he stayed stuck in place. What Jack didn't know was that by insulting Elon Musk, he had just taken the first step into a world that would challenge everything he thought he knew about himself. He had no idea what kind of consequences he was about to face, or how this one fleeting moment would push him into a life-altering journey that he was completely unprepared for. And Maria, as much as she had warned him to change, had no idea what was coming. She didn't know that her boyfriend was about to be swept up in a chain of events that would either break him or force him to become something far greater than he ever imagined. Jack stood behind his security booth, staring out at the parking lot, unaware that everything was about to change. The easy, predictable life he had known was slipping away, replaced by something darker, more dangerous. And it all began with a single, reckless insult. What he didn't know, what he couldn't possibly have known, was that Elon Musk wasn't just any billionaire. He wasn't someone who let slights go unnoticed. Musk had a plan. And Jack? Well, Jack was about to become part of it. The next morning, Jack woke up with the lingering feeling of regret pressing down on him. He rubbed his eyes, trying to shake off the weight of the previous day's encounter. His alarm buzzed obnoxiously at 7 a.m., cutting through the remnants of his uneasy sleep. He hadn't been able to shake the image of Elon Musk's calm, unflinching smile as Jack had fired off his insult. It haunted him. What had he done? Shaking off the thoughts, he dressed in his usual work uniform. The navy blue security guard shirt, badge, and hat that seemed to mark him as just another cog in the machine of the shopping center. He grabbed a cup of coffee on his way out the door, the bitter taste doing little to calm his nerves. Maria was still asleep when he left, and he didn't want to wake her with his mess of thoughts. The last thing he wanted was for her to see how shaken up he was after what had happened. As Jack drove to work, the streets seemed to blur, his mind occupied by that single moment with Musk. He couldn't get over how calm Musk had been. Didn't he deserve to be angry? To shout back? But no, Musk had just smiled and walked away like Jack was no more than a gnat he could swat away without breaking stride. The moment he arrived at the shopping center, he found himself feeling uneasy in a way he couldn't explain. The lot, usually a busy swirl of luxury cars and shoppers, now seemed far more intimidating. The workers, the managers, and the customers all felt like they were in another world, one that Jack would never be a part of. He slipped into his usual spot behind the security booth, trying to ignore the nagging feeling that something was off. But then, it happened. A phone call. "Jack Parker?" the voice on the other end said, a tone of professionalism that sent a shiver down his spine. "Yeah, this is him," Jack answered, frowning. "This is Alex from the management office. I need you to come to the office right away. We've got something important to discuss." Jack's mind raced. What the hell was this about? He had no idea what they could possibly want with him, but the anxiety bubbling in his chest told him it couldn't be good. He quickly made his way to the management office, his footsteps echoing in the otherwise quiet halls of the shopping center. When he arrived, Alex, the manager of the security team, sat behind his desk with a grim expression. A tall, sharp-looking woman in a sleek suit stood beside him, her arms crossed. She was a stranger to Jack, but there was something about the way she stood, confident, calculating, that made him feel even more out of place. "Jack," Alex said, his voice low. "This is Christina. She's here from corporate. She's got some important news for you." Jack raised an eyebrow. Corporate? He had barely ever interacted with corporate. What did they want with him? Christina stepped forward, extending a hand. "Jack, I'm here because of something that happened yesterday. An incident with a customer, I believe." Her eyes were sharp, searching his face as if she were sizing him up. Jack's heart skipped a beat. He knew exactly what she was talking about, but he wasn't about to admit it. "I don't know what you mean," Jack said, trying to keep his voice steady. "There wasn't any issue with a customer." Christina didn't flinch. Instead, she calmly placed a tablet on the desk, displaying a news article with a large image of Elon Musk, the headline reading, "Elon Musk in minor altercation at high-end shopping center." The article wasn't entirely clear, but there was enough detail to make Jack's stomach drop. It was vague, no names were mentioned, but the details of the encounter, the description of the heated exchange, the fact that a security guard had gotten involved, it was all too obvious. "You've got to be kidding me," Jack muttered under his breath. Christina leaned in. "We know it was you, Jack. The footage from the security cameras confirmed it." Jack's mind raced, trying to think of an explanation. I didn't know who he was. It was just a joke. Nothing serious." Alex's face remained stone cold. "Jack, it wasn't just a joke. That joke is going to have consequences. And it looks like we're the ones who have to deal with them." Christina's eyes locked onto Jack's. "Here's the thing. Mr. Musk was not only upset by your comments, he was, how shall I put this, extremely disappointed. He didn't appreciate being treated like that, and frankly, neither do we." "Wait," Jack said, now standing up straighter. "So, what? You're firing me? Over something stupid like this?" Christina shook her head. "No, not exactly. But Mr. Musk has personally requested that we offer you a position. Something different. He's taken an interest in you, Jack." Jack blinked. "A position? What the hell was that supposed to mean?" Alex spoke up again. "You see, Jack, Mr. Musk doesn't like being insulted, but he also believes in second chances. So he's offered you an opportunity, a kind of probationary trial, something that will involve you working directly with his team." The words hung in the air. Jack felt like he was in a dream. He'd insulted Musk, and now Musk wanted to give him a job? "You're kidding," Jack said, shaking his head. "Why would he?" Christina interrupted. "He believes in testing people, in seeing whether they can rise to the occasion, even after making a mistake. You have a unique chance here, Jack. And, in case you're wondering, this is not something many people get. Not from someone like him." Jack's head spun. He had no idea what to make of this. A job offer from Elon Musk? How was this even real? He was just a guy working a dead-end job in a parking lot, and now he was being offered a chance to work with one of the most influential people in the world. I need to think about it, Jack said, his mind racing. Christina's expression softened for just a moment. Of course. But know this, Jack. You don't get many chances like this in life. Don't waste it. As Jack left the office, his mind was in turmoil. He hadn't expected this. He hadn't even known what to expect after insulting Musk. But this opportunity, was something he had never seen coming. The question now was simple. Would he take the chance? Would he step into a world he knew nothing about? Or would he walk away and keep his life as it was? The tension between the two options was heavy, and the weight of Musk's decision pressed on him. Jack barely slept that night. The offer from Musk and the strange encounter with Christina and Alex still gnawed at him, keeping him awake long after the usual quiet of the city had settled in. His mind was a whirlpool of confusion and fear. How could he go from a nobody working a dead-end job to being part of something that could change his life forever? By the time the sun peeked through his blinds the next morning, Jack had decided he had to at least see what this opportunity was all about. What was the harm in showing up, hearing Musk out and figuring it out from there? But deep down, he wasn't sure if he had the guts to actually walk away from everything he knew. His small apartment, the security booth, the familiar but depressing routine. It was all he had ever known. What if he failed? What if he didn't belong in the world Musk was offering him? What if he wasn't good enough? Despite the anxiety gnawing at him, Jack didn't back out. He grabbed a quick breakfast and got dressed, more out of habit than excitement. It felt surreal, like he was preparing for something monumental, something he couldn't quite grasp. He was still in disbelief that Elon Musk himself had reached out to him, a parking lot security guard. Arriving at the address Christina had given him was both nerve-wracking and exhilarating. He stood in front of a sleek, modern building with glass windows that reflected the world outside like a cold mirror. The kind of building that felt like it belonged to people who lived in a completely different world. Jack hesitated for a moment, staring up at the towering structure. The sign out front read, "Tesla Innovation Hub," in bold letters. He swallowed hard and walked through the doors, his heart pounding in his chest. The lobby was pristine, sleek and shiny, far more luxurious than any place Jack had ever stepped foot in. He walked up to the front desk, feeling out of place in his standard security guard uniform. "Can I help you?" the receptionist asked, eyeing him up and down with a professional smile. Yeah. I'm here I think I'm here for a meeting with Elon Musk." Jack cleared his throat. That sounded ridiculous even to his own ears. The receptionist didn't skip a beat. "Right, Mr. Parker. Please, have a seat. Someone will be with you shortly." As he sat in the waiting area, Jack couldn't stop the overwhelming sense of disbelief. This wasn't real. How could it be? He kept running over everything in his mind. The insult he'd thrown Musk's way, the fact that Musk had not only brushed it off but somehow saw something in him. It made no sense. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, a man in a sharp black suit appeared. He looked like a typical high-powered corporate type, clean-cut, confident, with an air of quiet authority. "Mr. Parker?" the man asked, extending his hand. "I'm Daniel. I'll be taking you to meet Mr. Musk. Right this way." Jack stood and followed Daniel down the hall, each step bringing him closer to something he could hardly comprehend. The walk felt like a blur. The hallways were filled with sleek offices, glass walls, and the soft hum of high-tech equipment. It felt like Jack had stepped into a futuristic world, a world that had no place for someone like him. Finally, Daniel stopped at a large conference room door and knocked. "Mr. Musk, Mr. Parker is here." "Come in," came the voice from inside. As Jack stepped into the room, his eyes landed on Elon Musk, sitting casually at a sleek, minimalistic desk. Musk was dressed in a black jacket and jeans, looking every bit the eccentric billionaire. He smiled when he saw Jack, but there was an intensity in his eyes, a depth of focus that made Jack feel like he was being studied under a microscope. "Jack," Musk said, standing up and extending his hand. "Good to finally meet you." Jack shook his hand, still not sure what to say or how to react. He'd seen Musk in the news, in interviews, on the cover of magazines, but standing in front of him in person, It was surreal. "Thanks for giving me this opportunity," Jack said, his voice coming out more shaky than he intended. "Opportunity?" Musk chuckled, walking over to a large window that overlooked the city below. "What you're about to experience isn't about an opportunity, Jack. It's about testing yourself, seeing if you can handle a world that demands more than most are willing to give." Jack's stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" Musk turned back around and leaned against the window frame, his arms crossed. "I believe everyone has the potential to do extraordinary things, especially when they're pushed to their limits. And you, Jack, have shown me something. Most people would never have the guts to speak their mind the way you did. Sure, it was rude, but it showed me something about you. The way you carry that chip on your shoulder, it means you're capable of something bigger." Jack blinked, trying to process what Musk was saying. "So, you want me to work for you?" Musk's gaze sharpened. "I want you to join me, Jack. I want you to step into a world you can't even imagine right now. This isn't a cushy office job, though. This is about pushing boundaries. You're going to be a part of something that will change the world, but only if you can handle the pressure." Jack's mind spun as he tried to process it all. "But I'm just a guy who works in a parking lot. I don't know anything about changing the world." Musk smiled. "Exactly. And that's what makes this interesting. You're not bogged down by what everyone else thinks you should be. You've got raw potential, and that's what I'm betting on." Jack felt his pulse quicken. This was happening. This wasn't some prank or dream. He was standing here, talking to Elon Musk about joining him in some life-altering project. The weight of it all began to press down on him, and for the first time in a long time, he felt alive. But at the same time, he was terrified. "Where do we go from here?" Jack asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Musk's eyes gleamed with excitement. "First, you prove that you can survive the next phase. We'll test you, your adaptability, your decision-making, your endurance. If you make it through, we'll see where it takes us. I'm giving you a shot, Jack. Don't waste it." Jack felt his breath catch in his chest. This was no longer about a job. It was about a journey, one that could take him from the parking lot to places he never thought possible. The next few days were a blur for Jack. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Musk's intense gaze, the weight of the offer pressing down on him like a heavy stone. He wasn't sure what was worse, the fear of failing or the fear of letting go of everything he'd ever known. Jack spent hours thinking about it, about the security of his current life and the uncharted territory Musk was asking him to enter. Maria had noticed his distraction. She'd grown quiet, sensing something was off. Jack couldn't explain it. How could he tell her he'd been given a chance to change his life forever? But it felt more like a test than an opportunity. That night, as he lay in bed, Maria reached out, touching his arm gently. "You're not yourself lately," she said softly. "What's going on, Jack?" He hesitated. His mind raced with 1,000 thoughts, each one pulling him in a different direction. I got an offer. From Elon Musk." Maria sat up, her eyebrows rising. "Wait, what? Elon Musk? The Elon Musk?" Jack nodded, the weight of his own words hitting him again. "Yeah, he wants me to work with him. But it's not like a normal job. It's more like he's testing me." Maria's expression shifted, a mixture of disbelief and curiosity. "What do you mean, testing you?" Jack took a deep breath and explained everything. The encounter in the parking lot, the strange offer, the chance to work directly with Musk, the pressure to prove himself. Maria listened in silence, her face unreadable. Jack's words hung between them, creating an unspoken tension that was becoming harder to ignore. "Jack," she finally said, her voice filled with uncertainty. "This sounds too big, too crazy. You're not prepared for something like this. We both know you don't belong in that world." The truth of her words hit harder than Jack had anticipated. He wasn't prepared. He wasn't ready. He'd spent his whole life in the shadows, watching people like Musk from the sidelines, never daring to dream that one day he could be a part of that world. "But what if I'm wrong?" Jack said, his voice almost pleading. "What if this is my chance? What if I can prove to myself that I'm capable of more?" Maria's eyes softened, and she reached for his hand. "I just don't want to see you get hurt, Jack. You've always been able to handle things in your own way. But this? This isn't like anything you've done before. It's a whole new world, and it's not as easy as it looks from the outside. Jack closed his eyes, fighting the swirl of emotions inside him. The fear, the excitement, the uncertainty. It was all a mess inside his head. But deep down, he knew Maria was right. This wasn't going to be easy, and he wasn't sure he had the strength to handle it. The next morning, Jack received a message from Musk's team. It was time to meet again. The email was brief, but the words hit Jack like a punch to the gut. Ready to begin your journey? Jack stood frozen in front of his phone, staring at the words. Ready? Could he really be ready for this? Before he could process it, he found himself heading to the Tesla Innovation Hub once again. This time, he wasn't sure if he was walking towards something amazing or if he was walking straight into the fire. As he entered the building, the weight of the moment sank in. The lobby was still as pristine as it had been before, the sleek and polished environment feeling even more foreign to him than before. He approached the receptionist again, his palms sweaty. "I'm here to see Mr. Musk," Jack said, his voice wavering slightly. The receptionist looked at him with a professional smile, nodding. "Of course, Mr. Parker. He's expecting you." This time, there was no waiting. No delay. Jack was immediately ushered into the back halls of the building, where the energy in the air felt different, more electric, more alive. Musk was waiting in a large conference room, his posture confident but welcoming, like he was expecting Jack to step up. "Jack," Musk greeted him with a smile. "I'm glad you came back. Ready to begin?" Jack nodded, but his heart was pounding. He didn't know what was ahead, but he had to keep moving forward. There was no turning back now. Musk motioned for him to sit. "Here's the deal, Jack. You've got what it takes to succeed, but only if you push yourself beyond what you think is possible. This isn't about doing things the easy way. It's about making the tough decisions, even when you're scared." Jack swallowed, feeling the weight of Musk's words press into him. This wasn't just about a job. It wasn't just about a paycheck. It was about something bigger, something that would define who he was, who he would become. "You're going to be put through a series of challenges," Musk continued. "They'll test your limits, your intelligence, your resilience, your creativity. Some of them will be uncomfortable. Some of them will push you to the brink. But if you succeed, you'll be rewarded. If you fail, it's over." Jack's stomach tightened. What kind of challenges? Musk's gaze was unflinching. "Everything from thinking on your feet to dealing with high-stakes situations. I need to know that you can adapt, that you can handle the pressure. It won't be easy, but I'm not giving you this chance because I think you'll be perfect. I'm giving it to you because I believe you can surprise yourself." Jack sat there, listening, the weight of it all settling heavily on him. The chance Musk was offering wasn't something most people would ever dream of. But with that opportunity came the possibility of failure, and that scared Jack more than anything. But one thing was certain, this was a chance of a lifetime. The fear was real, but the potential to change everything was too strong to ignore. The weeks following Jack's decision felt like a roller coaster that he couldn't get off of. Every day, he woke up with a sense of nervous anticipation. Would today be the day he failed? Would today be the day he cracked under the pressure? It started innocuously enough. Musk's team put him through a series of simulations, each designed to test his decision-making abilities. Jack had to solve problems that ranged from managing high-stakes negotiations to thinking on his feet during simulated crises. The scenarios were intense, and Jack had to keep his mind sharp every second. Each day pushed him harder, and though he felt the strain, he couldn't afford to let up. Musk had made it clear from the start. Failure was not an option. But as the days wore on, Jack began to feel the weight of the constant pressure. His usual work at the parking lot had always been routine, predictable. Now, he found himself constantly on edge, second-guessing his decisions and doubting his ability to keep up with the challenges Musk was throwing at him. The pressure was relentless, and for the first time in a long time, Jack found himself questioning if he could actually do this. Maria was starting to notice the change in him. She could see the exhaustion in his eyes, hear the strain in his voice. "Jack, you're not okay," she said one evening, as they sat at the small kitchen table, the weight of the conversation hanging heavily in the air. "I don't care how big this opportunity is, you're burning out. You're not the same person I knew. Jack stared at his hands, his fingers fidgeting nervously. I'm fine, he lied. I'm just tired. Maria's eyes softened, but there was a sadness in them. No, you're not just tired. You're falling apart. I've never seen you like this before. Maybe this isn't worth it. Her words hit him like a slap. He didn't want to admit it, but she was right. The weight of the opportunity Musk had given him was starting to feel like a chain around his neck, pulling him deeper into a world he wasn't sure he belonged in. Every day, Jack found himself pushing harder, trying to prove to Musk and to himself that he was worthy of this chance. But the more he tried, the more it felt like he was slipping. He stood up abruptly, pacing across the small apartment. I don't have a choice, Maria. This is my shot. If I don't do this, then what? I go back to the parking lot? Back to being invisible? No, I have to make it work. I have to make it. Maria watched him, her concern deepening. Jack, I don't want to see you lose yourself in this. You're more than just this job, this chance. I love you for who you are, not for what you might become. Her words hit him in a way he hadn't expected. He knew she loved him, but it was the first time he'd realized how much he was losing in his pursuit of this new life. Was this really the path to his dreams, or was it just a one-way ticket to losing everything that truly mattered? For a moment, Jack stood there, lost in thought. Was he willing to risk everything for a chance at something bigger? Was it worth losing himself in the process? The next morning, Jack arrived at the Tesla Innovation Hub once again. This time, he wasn't sure what to expect. The anxiety that had been creeping up on him for days was overwhelming, and he felt more out of place than ever. As he entered the building, the familiar hum of the high-tech world seemed colder than before. The bright lights, the polished floors, the sleek walls, it all felt like it was closing in on him. When he entered the conference room, Musk was already there, waiting. There was a quiet intensity to Musk's demeanor today, his gaze fixed firmly on Jack. Jack, Musk said, nodding toward the seat across from him. Sit down. Jack did, his palms sweating as he tried to steady his nerves. He was tired. So tired. He wasn't sure how much longer he could keep this up. You've been under a lot of pressure, Musk said, studying Jack carefully. I can see it. You're burning out. But here's the thing. This isn't about perfection. This isn't about handling every challenge without breaking. It's about how you respond when you're pushed to the edge. It's about resilience. You've already shown me that you have it. But now, I need to know if you're willing to keep pushing, even when it feels like everything is falling apart. Jack swallowed hard. The weight of Musk's words hung in the air like a heavy fog. I don't know if I can do it, Jack admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't know if I'm cut out for this. Musk studied him for a long moment before speaking again. The fact that you're questioning yourself means you're not giving up. You're still fighting. And that's exactly what I need from you. Life is hard. It's messy. But it's those who keep going, even when it's tough, that end up shaping the world. I believe you can do this, Jack. But it's up to you whether or not you choose to believe in yourself. Jack looked down at his hands, feeling the weight of his decision pressing down on him. He had come so far, he couldn't back out now. But was he willing to risk everything, to give up his comfort, his stability, for something that might break him? For a moment, Jack didn't say anything. He just sat there, letting the silence settle around him. But then, something inside him stirred. A small, quiet voice that whispered, "You can do this. You're stronger than you think." Jack met Musk's eyes, and for the first time in weeks, he felt a spark of determination flicker inside him. It wasn't just about the job anymore. It wasn't just about proving Musk right. It was about proving to himself that he was capable of more. I'm in, Jack said, his voice steady, even though his heart was pounding. I'm ready to keep going. Musk smiled, and for the first time, Jack felt a sense of peace settle over him. He wasn't sure what the future held, but he knew one thing for sure. He had made it this far, and he wasn't going to stop now. Days turned into weeks, and the challenges continued to mount. Jack's journey had only just begun, but it felt like he had already lived a lifetime within those few days. Every day Musk pushed him further, testing his limits in ways Jack never thought possible. The intensity of the challenges, coupled with the constant pressure to succeed, left him feeling drained, but something else was beginning to change inside him. The exhaustion was still there, but so was a new sense of clarity. Jack realized that this wasn't just a test of his abilities, this was a test of his character. It wasn't just about surviving the challenges Musk set before him. It was about learning to trust himself again. One morning, Jack found himself standing in front of a sleek Tesla prototype in one of the innovation labs. Musk had asked him to design a solution for an unexpected technical glitch that had halted production. He had just a few hours to come up with a solution. As the clock ticked down, Jack felt the pressure build. The walls seemed to close in on him, the hum of the machines around him intensifying. He could feel his pulse racing as he reviewed the specs, analyzing the problem over and over again. But this time, something was different. Instead of panic, he felt focused. He remembered the countless simulations, the mental exercises Musk had put him through. Jack realized that everything he'd learned so far had led him to this moment. His fingers flew across the keyboard as he worked out the solution in his head. The puzzle pieces clicked into place. In that moment, he knew what needed to be done. The solution wasn't perfect, but it was efficient. It would fix the problem and keep the project moving forward. With a few final adjustments, Jack sat back, allowing himself a moment to breathe. When Musk entered the lab moments later, he raised an eyebrow, impressed by Jack's progress. "You've done it," Musk said, his voice steady but tinged with approval. "You've cracked the code." Jack didn't feel like celebrating. The relief was there, but it was tempered by the realization that this was just one challenge among many. Still, there was a sense of accomplishment that Jack hadn't felt in a long time. "I've learned a lot from you," Jack said, his voice steady. "It's not just about the answer. It's about the process, about keeping my cool when everything seems to be falling apart." Musk nodded, his gaze fixed on Jack. "Exactly. And that's why I'm putting you to the next test. I want to see if you can handle the real stakes. It's time to take what you've learned and apply it in the field. This won't be a simulation. You'll be handling a live situation. Are you ready?" Jack's heart skipped a beat. Live situation? The stakes had just gotten real. He nodded, his jaw tightening. "I'm ready." The next day, Jack was thrust into a live test that sent his nerves spiraling. He was flown to a remote location, one of Tesla's major production facilities that had recently experienced a sudden and severe setback. A critical piece of equipment had malfunctioned, and production was at a standstill. The pressure was immense, as thousands of dollars in losses mounted by the minute. As Jack arrived at the site, he was greeted by a team of engineers, each looking at him with a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. They didn't know him. They didn't know if he was capable of handling the situation. The site was loud, chaotic. Everything was in disarray. Jack had never seen a problem of this magnitude before, and the pressure felt suffocating. But he didn't flinch. The adrenaline coursed through his veins, and his instincts kicked in. He started by talking to the engineers, gathering information, analyzing the situation step by step. There was no time to second-guess himself. Every decision had to be calculated, decisive. For the next several hours, Jack worked alongside the team, making calls, troubleshooting issues, and reconfiguring the system. He was exhausted, but every step forward, every fix, gave him more confidence. Slowly but surely, things started to come together. The equipment was repaired. Production resumed. When the system was back online, Jack finally allowed himself to breathe. The relief was overwhelming, and for the first time since stepping into Musk's world, he felt like he had earned his place. Musk arrived shortly after, observing the results. He walked up to Jack, his face unreadable. For a moment, Jack thought maybe he had made a mistake, but then Musk spoke, his voice low and measured. "Jack, you've proven something today," Musk said, his eyes locking with Jack's. "You've proven that you can handle the pressure. That's what this is about, resilience in the face of adversity." Jack nodded, feeling a sense of pride he hadn't felt in a long time. "It wasn't easy, but I guess that's the point, isn't it? You never know what you're capable of until you're forced to face your limits." Musk smiled, and there was a hint of respect in his eyes. "Exactly. And that's why I'm offering you something more than just a position here at Tesla." Jack's heart raced. More than a position? What did that mean? Musk continued, I want you to join me in my next venture. We've got some new projects lined up, projects that will push you even further than this one. I see something in you, Jack. You've got the drive, the determination. You're exactly the kind of person I want by my side. Jack stood there, stunned. This was more than he had ever dreamed of. It was bigger than just a job. It was an opportunity to change everything. But as the weight of Musk's words settled in, Jack couldn't help but think about everything he had risked. His old life, his relationships, his sense of self. Was this really worth it? Musk's voice broke through his thoughts. You've come this far, Jack. Now it's up to you. The question is, are you ready to take the next step? Jack's mind raced. Was he ready? Could he handle the magnitude of what Musk was offering? For the first time in a long time, Jack felt like he had a choice. A real choice. He looked at Musk, then back at the team that had worked so tirelessly to help him. With one last deep breath, Jack made his decision. I'm in, he said, his voice steady. Musk smiled, extending his hand. Welcome to the next chapter of your life, Jack. Let's change the world. The days following Jack's acceptance into Musk's next venture were a whirlwind. He found himself thrust into a new world that was even more intense and demanding than the last. Every waking moment felt like it was spent solving problems, coming up with innovative solutions, and facing challenges he had never imagined. The pace was relentless, but Jack was determined to prove that he had what it took. As the team prepared for a major unveiling of one of their most ambitious projects yet, the pressure mounted. Musk had placed Jack in charge of coordinating the final stages of the development, a task that would require him to work closely with engineers, designers, and high-level executives. There was no room for error. Every decision had to be precise, and every move had to be calculated. Jack had done everything he could to prepare for this moment, but the closer it came, the more he felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. His body was worn, his mind exhausted. He hadn't had a moment of peace in weeks. The long hours, the sleepless nights, the endless meetings, they were starting to take their toll. One evening, as Jack sat alone in his office, staring at a spreadsheet on his computer screen, he couldn't help but feel a wave of doubt wash over him. It was as though all the progress he had made was suddenly irrelevant. He wondered if he was truly cut out for this, if he had made the right choice in abandoning everything that once mattered to him. In that moment, the door to his office opened, and Maria walked in, her presence bringing a sense of calm to the chaos swirling in his mind. Jack, she said softly, you've been working non-stop. You need to take a break. You're not yourself. Jack looked up at her, his face haggard. I can't, Maria. There's too much at stake. This project, it's everything. If I screw this up, everything I've worked for, everything I've sacrificed, it'll be for nothing. Maria walked over to his desk, gently placing her hand on top of his. Listen to me. You've already proven so much. You've come so far, Jack. But none of that matters if you lose yourself in the process. This isn't just about the job or the company. It's about you. And you're worth so much more than just a title or a paycheck. Her words cut through the haze of stress and self-doubt that had clouded his mind. For the first time in weeks, Jack felt like he could breathe again. Maria was right. He had been so focused on proving himself that he had lost sight of what truly mattered. He had let the weight of the opportunity blind him to the people who cared about him, to the life he had left behind. I don't know if I can keep going, Maria, Jack confessed, his voice breaking. I feel like I'm losing myself. I don't even know who I am anymore. Maria's eyes softened, and she knelt down beside him, taking his hand in hers. Jack, you've always known who you are. You've always been driven, always been willing to push yourself to be better. But you don't have to do it alone, and you don't have to lose yourself in the process. Jack felt the weight of her words settle deep within him. He had been so focused on impressing Musk and securing his place in this world that he had forgotten why he started this journey in the first place. It was never about fame or fortune. It was about discovering his true potential, about finding a way to make a difference. Maria was right. He didn't have to choose between success and happiness. He could have both. With newfound clarity, Jack made a decision. He wasn't going to let the fear of failure control him anymore. He wasn't going to let his doubts define his journey. He would give everything he had to this project, but he would also remember to hold on to the parts of himself that mattered the most. The day of the big unveiling arrived. The tension in the air was palpable. The team was ready, the project was finished, and the moment of truth had finally come. Jack stood backstage, his heart pounding in his chest as he waited for his cue. He couldn't shake the nerves. This was it. This was the moment that could make or break everything. But as he looked out at the crowd, a strange calm washed over him. This wasn't about perfection. It wasn't about impressing anyone. It was about doing his best, staying true to himself, and trusting that everything would fall into place. When the curtain was pulled back and the lights hit the stage, Jack stepped forward with the team, his head held high. The room erupted in applause as they revealed the groundbreaking project, a new AI-powered vehicle prototype that promised to revolutionize the automotive industry. It was a bold move, an innovation that could change everything. Jack smiled, feeling a rush of pride as the audience reacted with awe. This was the culmination of everything he had worked for, everything he had fought for. But even as the excitement swirled around him, Jack knew that this was just the beginning. He had crossed the threshold, and no matter what came next, he was ready to face it head-on. Musk stepped forward to join him, placing a hand on Jack's shoulder. "Well done, Jack. You've exceeded my expectations," Musk said, his voice calm but sincere. For the first time in a long time, Jack felt a sense of peace settle over him. He had done it. He had faced the fear, the doubts, the pressure, and he had come out stronger for it. The journey wasn't over, but Jack finally understood that it wasn't about the destination. It was about the growth, the lessons learned, and the strength found along the way. The aftermath of the grand unveiling was nothing short of electric. Jack was flooded with messages, congratulations from colleagues, and accolades from those who had witnessed his transformation over the past months. The project was hailed as a success. More than that, it was a statement. The new AI-powered vehicle prototype was groundbreaking, pushing the boundaries of what technology could do in the automotive industry. But for Jack, the applause, the recognition, and the spotlight didn't hold the same weight they once had. Instead, as the whirlwind of celebration died down, he found himself reflecting. The momentary high of success wasn't what he craved anymore. It wasn't the fame or the prestige. It was the quiet knowledge that he had found something deeper within himself. As he sat in his office, staring out the window, the city lights casting a soft glow on the skyline, Jack thought about everything he had gone through to get to this point. The sleepless nights, the doubts, the sacrifices, it had all led him here, to this moment of clarity. He thought back to the person he was when he first walked into Musk's world. He had been lost, unsure, driven by a hunger for validation. He had sacrificed his personal life, his relationships, and his own well-being in pursuit of success. He had been on a mission to prove something to the world and to himself. But along the way, he had lost sight of the very things that made him who he was: his connection to others, his values, and his sense of purpose. Maria's words echoed in his mind. "You don't have to lose yourself in the process." It was as if a veil had been lifted from his eyes. He had spent so much time trying to climb the ladder, chasing after achievements, that he had forgotten to live. But now, he understood that true success wasn't about the destination. It was about the journey, the people you met along the way, and the lessons you learned. Weeks passed, and Jack began to find balance in his life once again. He made more time for the people who mattered most. He reconnected with old friends and began building relationships that weren't tied to his career. He still worked hard, still pushed boundaries, but he had learned to pace himself. He wasn't defined by his achievements anymore. He was defined by the person he had become through those challenges. And then there was Maria. She had been by his side from the very beginning, and their bond had only grown stronger. He had once been too focused on his own journey to see how much she meant to him, but now he saw everything clearly. She had been his anchor through the storms, and he knew that he wanted to share the rest of his life with her. One evening, as they sat together at a quiet restaurant, Jack looked at Maria and felt a surge of gratitude. He had found peace not just within himself, but in his relationships as well. He wasn't alone anymore. And that, he realized, was the most important lesson of all. "Maria," Jack said, taking her hand across the table, I don't think I could have made it here without you. You've been my strength when I didn't know if I had any left." Maria smiled, her eyes soft with affection. "Jack, you've always had the strength within you. You just had to learn how to tap into it." Jack nodded, his heart full. "I've learned that, haven't I? It's not about proving anything to anyone. It's about being true to who you are and trusting that everything else will fall into place." Maria leaned in closer, her voice barely a whisper. "So what's next for you, Jack?" Jack took a deep breath, his gaze steady as he looked into her eyes. "I don't know exactly what the future holds, but I know this: I'm not afraid anymore. Whatever comes, I'll face it with everything I have, and I'll do it with you by my side." As the years went on, Jack's career continued to soar, but now it was different. He didn't chase after success for the sake of success. He sought purpose. He worked on projects that aligned with his values, that made a real difference in the world. He became a mentor to younger engineers, sharing his experiences and lessons learned the hard way. He learned to enjoy the quiet moments, to cherish time with the people he loved, and to never take anything for granted. And when Elon Musk approached him with new, ambitious projects, Jack no longer felt the weight of doubt or fear. He knew he could face whatever came his way, not because of his career or his reputation, but because of the person he had become. The journey wasn't over. It would never be over. But Jack had learned that the most important thing was to keep moving forward, no matter the obstacles. The challenges, the failures, and the victories were all part of the story. But it was the journey itself that defined him. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. The journey to success isn't always a straight line. It's filled with twists, turns, and moments of doubt. But it's those moments that shape who we become. What's the biggest lesson you've learned along your own journey? Share your thoughts below, and let's keep the conversation going. What would you do if you suddenly lost everything, and no one was there to catch you? It was a quiet, almost eerie afternoon in the heart of downtown Los Angeles. The sun was high in the sky, casting long shadows across the rows of parked cars in the underground lot. The hum of the city felt distant, muted beneath the layers of concrete and steel. A steady stream of vehicles came and went, but nothing out of the ordinary. Just another day in the bustling life of a city that never seemed to stop. James Holloway, a middle-aged security guard, was doing his rounds, taking slow, deliberate steps between the rows of vehicles. He had been working in this parking structure for years, a place he had grown to know like the back of his hand. But lately, something had shifted inside him. A bitterness that had seeped into his daily routines. The excitement he once had about life, the dreams of glory on the football field, had long since faded. Now, he was just another cog in the machine, barely noticed and constantly overlooked. That was, until today. James was making his way toward a newer section of the lot, his eyes scanning the space for any violations. A car was parked in a space that was meant for staff only, and he was about to write a ticket when something caught his eye. A sleek, black car with tinted windows was parked under one of the overhead lights. It stood out against the usual sea of gray sedans and minivans, as if it were a rare bird in a cage full of pigeons. But what struck him even more wasn't just the car. It was the man who had just stepped out of it. Keanu Reeves. The man, the myth, the legend. The calm and collected Hollywood star known for his roles in movies like The Matrix and John Wick. Keanu wasn't just an actor. He was a symbol of humility, kindness, and coolness. His face was instantly recognizable to anyone who'd spent a minute watching movies. But here, in this parking lot, he wasn't a star. He was just another guy. And that made James feel something he couldn't quite shake, a strange sense of power. James wasn't starstruck, but he couldn't help the flicker of disdain that crossed his mind. Why should someone like Keanu be treated differently? To James, it seemed like the rich and famous were always given special treatment, while people like him were constantly pushed to the margins. Here, in this forgotten corner of the city, he felt like the only one who truly mattered. The moment was brief, just a flash in time. But as Keanu walked past James, heading toward the elevator, something inside James snapped. "Hey, you!" James called out, his voice rough, his tone filled with the edge he had carried for years. Keanu paused, turning his head slightly in James's direction, his brow furrowing in confusion. Move that car. It's parked in the wrong spot.